Hello again, yes, it is I, the conspicuous Moo, and, well, we had quite a morning, didn't we? I gotta admit, when I first saw these, when I got up in the morning, I was annoyed, to say the least. But I managed to calm down. I went and I had a run, and I played a lot of Classic, and that got me in a much better mood, so I'm now much more positive. Now, we got some buffs, we got some nerfs. Some of them matter, some of them don't. One of the more amusing things is that even now, Vitality Sacrifice, which is probably the strongest legendary out there for us, is still going strong. Haven't touched it at all. Wonderful. Keep up the good work, Blizzard. Don't touch it. As for the rest of it, let's get cracking. Okay, so let's get the worst news out of the way first. Our second favourite legendary behind Vitality Sacrifice, Stormstout's Last Keg, has gotten nerfed. The damage is now 15%, down from 30%. It still has the additional charge. Well, it's hard not to be disappointed by this. Presumably, you know, we did get quite a significant buff to Keg Smash, and that has been reflected in some of the logs over the last week or so. You know, we have been doing more damage, and, you know, we've been generating more threat. We've been getting into a much more comfortable place, and it looks like they're trying to rebalance it from that perspective. It's not one that I agree with. I'm still much more along the lines of, instead of pushing down all legendaries, let's lift them all up a bit. But as I'll explain later, Blizzard have already recognised that they might have overdone it a touch on these legendary power nerfs, and that we are expecting buffs in the future. So let's hope that Stormstout's Last Keg gets reverted back to its original form. Now, as you go into the more meaningful legendary buffs that we got, Charred Passions. Now, on the Brewmaster scale of legendaries, this was already second. Because we thought, you know, the additional fire damage was, you know, fairly useful. Well, they've taken it from 30%, put it up to 70%. So that's going to be quite a significant amount of damage now for single target and AoE. So using either Blackout Kick or Spinning Crane Kick when you start Breath of Fire will refresh the duration of Breath of Fire dot on the target. That means that you can keep up Breath of Fire pretty much indefinitely. So, you know, that's another 3 seconds of coverage, because usually it's a 15-second cooldown and lasts for 12 seconds, not affected by haste in any way, shape or form. So you would have that permanent dot and 5% damage reduction. It's not really the dot that makes the difference here, though. It's the actual, the additional damage as fire damage. So, you know, more damage, more threat, good. You've got a single target option in Blackout Kick. You've got an AoE option, Spinning Crane Kick. It's hard to have any complaints about that. That's pretty good. So, yeah, there's at least one tick for Blizzard. The second tick is this one. Fatal Touch, I have mentioned before. I love Touch of Death, being back on Brewmasters. So, having the cooldown as being reduced by 120 seconds or 2 minutes means that we can, you know, if you equip this, you can now use Touch of Death every minute. So, you know, that's a lot more fun, just baseline fun built in. But also, you know, it is, again, more damage, more threat, and it also takes off 200% of your damage is cleared off your stagger as well. So, you know, defensively it also has an option as well, but you probably won't notice that because you're having too much fun just going bleep, bye-bye. So yeah, that's a great one too, and, you know, that's definitely third at the moment, I'd reckon. Yeah, so now we move on to the legendaries that were changed, but who cares? Invoker's Delight was actually a general, and they've increased the haste to 20% from 12%, and the length of this buff to 20 seconds from 15 seconds, and it doesn't really matter because you know, you'd never go for haste anyway. So Invoker's Delight, still nope. Shadowlands Might got nerfed, don't know why. What metrics are they looking at to determine that a legendary that absolutely nobody was taking anyway, because it's just bad in comparison to all of the other Brewmaster ones, needed a nerf? The only thing I can guess is that perhaps they meant to increase the proc rate to at least 50%. and they forgot to do that. So they took a bad legendary power and made it even worse. So well done, outstanding, tip-top marks, tally-ho. But as I said, only a couple of hours after this beta patch dropped, Calvax gave us a post and said, you know, we're currently in the process of tuning legendary items. Really, we hadn't noticed. Thanks for the heads up. So you may see a number of legendary effects that have had their power reduced once again. They go on to say that they recently had internal discussions about their tuning targets for legendaries and have concluded that they were aiming too low with respect to their power. And yes, I suspect you're on the right track there. You know, the disadvantage with reducing all of these legendary power abilities is they cease to become legendary at all. And, you know, they're just like a useful augment. You know, you might as well be sockets at that point. So they say they are going to work on the tuning pass and all of these items. But of course, you know, you have to bear in mind that there's absolutely no guarantee that that means that legendaries that got nerfed are going to be restored or even improved. You know, they might just leave Stormstout's last keg as it is, and that's the way it's going to go. But anyway, it does implant a little seed of hope that some of these things can be turned around. As another very small aside, Fortified Brew actually got buffed. It's a smaller buff than it looks. The cooldown was changed from 7 minutes to 6 minutes. Now this is only on the PTR at the moment. This is not on the beta as of the time of this recording, because that's the way they do things now. They put it on the PTR first and then they transfer it across to the beta. The reason it's smaller than it looks is, of course, that Keg Smasher's brew reduction, while its damage was increased, the brew reduction was reduced from 4 to 3 seconds. So, you know, a bit of simple math shows that you do come out slightly ahead with the new version, the 6 minute cooldown, but not massively so. But, you know, a buff is a buff, I'll take it. But that hasn't been the only change in the last couple of days. We did have another Blizzard post earlier, and this was regarding the heavily loved Soulbind system, and they've basically taken away the third potency option. They moved a few potencies around because they were a little unbalanced in all the trees and they wanted to even that up a bit, and now they've just flat out removed the third potency slot option. So their reasoning for this is to increase the flexibility and make it more viable to use one Soulbind for multiple specializations. Even though that they take into account that that's probably not how people are going to do things, they wanted to give them that option. So the removed potency sockets have been replaced with either an endurance or a finesse socket, which are just easier to balance all around for all specs, and they say that they're looking forward to some feedback, so let's give them some. This is Karain. Karain is nice. Karain won't be unlocked for months, because we have to get through the entire Nightfade campaign to even access him. Anyway, as you can see, I've had to go a very, very certain route, and I don't have any room to maneuver whatsoever. The reason is because we have very, very few conduits that are actually any good at the moment. Scalding Brew, which has already been heavily nerfed, is there, and Way of the Fae, which is the Covenant ability. All the Covenant abilities are pretty much first or second choice potency, depending on which Covenant you choose, and even Way of the Fae has been nerfed as well. So I really, really want those two. There's only really one decent endurance conduit at the moment. In Harm Denial, I mean, I guess you could take Evasive Stride or Celestial Effervescence, but they're a long way down the line from Harm Denial right now, unfortunately. And as for Finesse, well, they're all pretty meh, and not very impactful, so this is a great system. Keep it up, Blizzard. You're doing good. But yeah, if I want two potencies, I don't have a choice anymore. I'm just going to have to take the Soulbind abilities those are attached to, because I've only got two potency slots now. So that's terrific. So in this example, this is the Soulbind I want to end up with on Nightfade, and as you can see, I didn't have any choice but to take a second endurance, which feels amazing. And it's not limited to them, of course. I took Nia, and I had to do exactly the same thing. You know, I didn't really have any say in what I was going to choose, what I was going to do. I think I got a finesse and an endurance out of it, so it was a little bit more flexible. Unfortunately, her Soulbind abilities are not nearly as appealing to me, personally, as Karain's is, so I probably wouldn't use her anyway. As for Dreamweaver, well, she had her best Soulbind ability nerfed last week, so she became less attractive then, and when I tried her out, I had to take a Soulbind ability I would never ever take in a gazillion years, but because it's linked to the potency conduit, I had to take it. So, Blizzard, Calvax, Honey Bunny, this is your feedback. I've got even less choice than before. Because you've taken away the third option of a third potency conduit, I'm even more railroaded than I was in the first place. And I didn't have a lot of choice then, and I didn't like the Soulbind abilities being tied to particular conduits. And that's still there, it's just, you know, it's even more obvious now which path I absolutely have to take if I want to get the best out of my character. That's not a great feeling. Like I've already said, if I want 2 potencies, I have to take a second endurance conduit in my favourite tree. Celestial Effervescence, Evasive Stride, who cares? They're both rubbish. So, if anything, this feels even more restrictive than it was before. And, you know, it's along the same lines as this conduit charge that they introduced. You know, they put an entire new system in, on top of the system, so you can system while you system. When, you know, they could just, like, not have a weak cooldown on the resetting of these damn things in the first place. Anyway, in summary, these changes are very mixed bag. But, you know, before we all start rolling DKs, well, don't do that. They're pretty bouncy themselves at the moment, or a bear. It is important to note at the moment that the balancing between all the tanks at the moment is pretty chaotic. It's, you know, we're not alone in having to struggle with Blizzard's design decisions and their nerfing and buffing and the tunings of their very many knobs. Like I just said, you know, Blood DKs a couple of weeks ago, best in Mythic Plus, brilliant. Then they got a nerf. They became the worst because they couldn't take high hits and high Mythic keys. They would just get one-shotted. You can't Death Strike when you're dead. So they became terrible. And now they've just got another bunch of buffs. So, you know, they're climbing the table again. And this is happening to all tanks. So, apart from Pallies, maybe. And yeah, I just want to leave you with some words of wisdom I picked up on the Peak of Serenity. One of the very, very nice commenters there said that, you know, at the end of the day, if you take away all of these borrowed powered systems, the legendary powers, you know, the Soulbinds, the Covenant abilities, all of that nonsense, you strip it all back, at the end of the day, we still have the core of a very good tank in Brewmaster. And I think that's important to remember while all of this other, like, swirly nonsense is going on around, you know, are still our key abilities. You know, we're still the same tank we were in BFA, but now we've got a pretty impressive damage shield as well. So, keep on fighting. It's got to get better. Blizzard said they were going to balance these things. I guess we have to have faith in them. And of course, also Moo. And on the Moo note, I will sign off. Keep on tripping out there. I'm going back to Classic. I'm having much more fun in Classic at the moment, so as you might have told by the footage. So I will see you again soon, but for now I am the conspicuous Moo. And a very good afternoon to you.